legend of the Punisher has taught us any lessons, it is to never mess with that man or kill his family. In this variant of the story, the Avengers kill the Punisher's family, and so with the backing of a sponsor, he goes on his revenge killing spree. Let's find out how he achieved it, shall we? Now we are thrown into the middle of the invasion led by Loki and greenlighted by Thanos and NYC. The Avengers are gathered to save the world, as are all other heroes worth their powers, including the X-Men. Next we see the Punisher driving really fast. His partner tries to calm him down, but Frank betrays something beneath his otherwise cold personality. His wife and kids just called him, saying they were at the park right in the middle of the battle between the heroes and the aliens. So Frank wants to get there as fast as he can to save his family. He gets there in time to catch a conversation between the Daredevil and a few of the X-Men. They have just cleared the park of aliens, and Cyclops was the one who let his I-beam reap through the park to kill some aliens. Frank's family, as well as other civilians, got caught in the crossfire. Daredevil is berating Cyclops for being so careless, and Cyclops tries to defend his actions. This conversation is what Frank hears as he arrives on the scene to see his family dead. He immediately pulls out a gun and shuts Cyclops up. In his pure rage, he also uses his pistol to kill Hawkeye and Jubilee. Wolverine becomes furious at the cold-blooded murder of his colleagues. He slices Frank across the cheek, but is eventually held back by Colossus. Frank is subsequently taken away to stand trial for the triple murders, whose victims may or may not have deserved it. Frank is represented by none other than his pal Mafia Murdock. They've been friends since their childhood. The trial is touch and go, and Frank is given a life sentence. On his way to be locked up, Frank's prison transport convoy is intercepted. The mastermind behind this reveals himself as Kessel Ring, a billionaire. He rescued Frank because he has a bone to pick with superhuman beings. In his case, half his face got burned when Dr. Doom threw the Human Torch at his car. Kessel introduces Frank to an entire group of people who are also disgruntled with superhuman individuals. Kessel offers Frank, or the Punisher, a job. He wants all superhuman people eliminated. Not just the good ones, but the bad ones too. It's a case of having a common enemy. Who else was more deserving to be the first to die than your friendly neighborhood hero? Unfortunately, Spider-Man remains central to the Marvel set of heroes, and so the Punisher picked him first. But already, Peter Parker, or Spider-Man, is in the middle of a personal battle. He is pitted against the Venom in the sewers of New York, and they are going at each other so intensely that Spider-Man isn't really alert to his surroundings. You'd think this was more of the Lizard's lair, but on a good day, Venom can get really low too. So they're fighting and tossing each other about when the Punisher locates them. Spider-Man just then senses someone or something in their shitty arena of battle. Please forgive the pun. By the time he gathers his wits to more fully figure out what or who it is, he and the Venom get fired at with taser wires from every angle. It's a booby trap set by the Punisher, and before they can do anything about it, very high voltages are applied to both of them, incapacitating them for long enough. Then the Punisher walks out from the shadows and executes both Spider-Man and Eddie Brock in cold blood. Next on the roster is the Hulk, and Frank admits it will need some thought. The Hulk is out there on the streets in all his green glory, causing mayhem and giving the police a headache. He had turned into the raging green monster much earlier, and the police are trying to get him to turn back to Bruce Banner. The Punisher fires a tracking dart as he takes his time and waits patiently. Finally, he finds Bruce asleep in an alley, having reverted back to his human form. And so the Punisher simply approaches Bruce while he is fast asleep and recovering from the stressors of the Hulk. The cops from earlier have disappeared, leaving Bruce or the Hulk as an easy target. The Punisher then simply puts a bullet through his skull. It's the Kingpin next, and apparently, the Punisher doesn't discriminate. He wants to take them all out, whatever side they're on. Frank shoots his way into the Kingpin's castle where both men clash. The Kingpin is strong and ready to smash into Frank's head if he can. Frank tries to get in a clean shot, but the Kingpin repeatedly frustrates and disarms him until Frank runs out of guns. Or has he? Frank has been beaten black and blue by the Kingpin at this point, who hopes to finish the job as he monologues. This is when Frank seizes the opportunity and pulls out two hidden side pistols. He shoots the Kingpin in the neck, and so there you go. Frank is once again apprehended to stand yet another trial. As always, Mafia Murdock is there to represent him. But the Punisher has been broken out of prison once again by his billionaire benefactor. Frank tells Kessel he has a plan to speed things up a little bit, but first he has to break into Dr. Doom's fortress. So Frank disguises himself in his transport helicopter to look like they belong to the Fantastic Four, and he flies to Dr. Doom's residence in the remote nation-state of Latveria. Dr. Doom lets him in unknowingly. Otherwise, he would rather shoot the helicopter down, whether they were the Fantastic Four or not. And this is a testament to how daring Frank Castle is. Frank parachutes into the castle and meets Dr. Doom face to face for the first time ever. Frank hesitates before the seemingly all-powerful Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom is all alien metal and is about to strike Frank to his death, but Frank slips an unassuming disc on Dr. Doom's forehead. It is metallic and magnetized, and the evil doctor struggles to get it off. The disc is supposed to mess with Dr. Doom's control over the Doombots keeping guard around the castle. Once the disc does its job, the Doombots become incapacitated, so it's just Frank and Dr. Doom together now. The disc continues to penetrate Dr. Doom's metallic skull, but it has its limits as the Doctor slowly falls under its effect. Frank gets a hammer and starts hammering away at Dr. Doom's metallic skull until you hear the squish. Afterwards, Frank locates what he came here for. It's a nuclear bomb in Dr. Doom's cellar. Next, we are taken to the surface of the moon, where both the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and the X-Men are assembled for an epic battle. Thankfully, they took their potentially destructive quarrel away from the Earth, or so they imagine. Magneto addresses the gathering first, then Storm, as the new leader of the X-Men, says a few words. In between the back and forth, they realize both groups had nothing to do with the call for battle, but before they can get their senses right, the nuclear bomb strikes and all mutants, good or bad, die. Except that Wolverine missed the party because he was down on Earth at a bar, drinking his regrets away, but the Punisher has him right where he ought to be. The Punisher emerges from the shadows, as always, to put Wolverine out of his misery. Frank owns up to killing everyone Wolverine mentioned in his soliloquy. This drives the Wolverine angry and he attacks Frank. All he can manage is a slice here and there, but Frank is the more purposeful combatant. He starts to turn Wolverine's claw around and manages to push them into his chest through to his back. Then Frank tosses Wolverine's lifeless body onto the electric fuse. After 3 years, Punisher has managed to eliminate as many as 500 superhuman individuals on both sides of the divide. During that time, his only friend and lawyer was Matthew Murdock. At least, he tried to reason with the Punisher on multiple occasions. Also, it was inevitable at this stage that the more pacifist Daredevil would clash with the Punisher. However, next on his target list is Captain America himself. They rendezvous at an abandoned warehouse, and the Cap quickly gets the advantage. He is physically stronger, and the Punisher's bullets can only bounce off the impenetrable shield. They have a history together, and both men are supposed to be war veterans. It turns out that as a kid, Frank was inspired by the stories of Captain America into becoming a soldier himself, until their relationship turned sour. But back to the present. The Captain is almost done with the Punisher when he pulls out a pistol from nowhere, and so the Captain gets a bullet in his head. There are 3 more to go, but who's counting? Frank heads back to Kessel's hideout. There's a party going on to celebrate the end of all superhuman entities. Frank is grumpy and lets it show, but Kessel will have none of it. He wants to continue to use Frank as a tool, but Frank flips it on him. Kessel gets a bullet for being such a bossy person. Now Frank must face the Daredevil. He has saved him for last because the Daredevil is notorious for being a pacifist. But the dirty job has to be done. They engage in a fight, and Daredevil manages to kick the Punisher off the roof as he plummets into a dumpster. Daredevil still tries to talk some sense into Frank, but he misjudges the situation. As the Daredevil offers Frank a hand, Frank moves to put a dagger through his chest. Then Frank goes on to unmask the Daredevil and realizes he is Matthew Murdock, his old friend. But there's one more victim left, which is himself. And with regret, he points the gun to his own chin and pulls the trigger. That's it, folks, and as Stan Lee would say, Excelsior. Please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to get up to speed on related Marvel comic book titles. Thank you for watching, and bye.